Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In this video, I'll be running through my transfer plans for the final time in the FPL 24-25 season ahead of Game Week 38. Right then, so before we get properly started, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to anyone who has been watching my content throughout the season. It's massively appreciated. Every single view matters so much to me, especially as I'm quite a small account as well. So if you're out there and you've been tuning in along the season, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And of course, we've still got another video to come later on this week, but if this is one of the final ones you watch from me this year, I just wanted to say a massive thank you. In the meantime, my team ahead of Game Week 38 actually does already look pretty well set up, which is a good thing because I've only got one free transfer to deal with any issues, of which I currently have two flags in my starting 11. That will be Saliba and Isak. I think one is a significant doubt, whereas one I would imagine will play. We'll come on to those in a moment's time. But looking elsewhere, there's luckily not too many different things I need to get sorted. Raya in goal, I don't think we need to talk about the keepers. That's an easy player to be starting against Southampton. In the defence, Gvardiol, Livramento are both absolutely fine to be starting for me. There's a good chance of clean sheets in both of those fixtures, although probably not guaranteed given it's Game Week 38 and we do usually see a little bit of chaos. But with both teams fighting for Champions League football and not quite secure yet, they're going to want to keep it tight at the back. And Gvardiol and Livramento have been so important to what both of those respective teams have been doing this year. I'd be very surprised if they came out of the starting lineup. And of course, it's a good fixture for both of them. Into the midfield, the players that I won't be talking about later on in this video are probably Mbermo and Bowen. Bowen is definitely arguably a captaincy shout. We'll lock in captains later on this week with my team selection video. At the moment, it's bust on Salah, but that is absolutely not locked in. So we'll talk about that later on in the week. Bowen and Mbermo, still good buys this week. I think most people already have Mbermo. Bowen has been a popular buy for weeks now and is in great form. Ipswich away from home is obviously a fantastic fixture, and he might not be the only West Ham player I end up on in Game Week 38. Up front, the players that are locked in for me are Watkins and Wissa. Watkins away at Man United, who will either be celebrating or probably very upset after their midweek fortunes are determined tonight. This is being recorded Wednesday morning, by the way, so we don't know the winner of the Spurs-Man United game just yet. So one of those two teams is going to be celebrating for the rest of the week. Man United, either way, don't have anything else to play for by the time they get to Villa. So Watkins, who does have quite a lot to play for with Villa chasing Champions League, that is obviously going to be a great player to be holding. And if you don't have him yet, I still think he's a good buy. The same goes for Wissa. Now, Brentford have an outside shot, a very outside shot of getting 8th place. But even if there was a 1% chance, they will still put out their strongest 11. And Wissa and Mbermo have been phenomenal all season. They're chasing 20 goals each. And Wissa has been in great form too. Wolves have nothing to play for. So Wissa, again, is one of the players to be buying or just owning in Game Week 38. In my personal opinion. So he will be going absolutely nowhere unless, of course, he gets injured in training or something. That seems very unlikely and has been a 90-minute man for a long time now. So that leaves me with three players I haven't, well, four, I suppose, including Salah, that I haven't spoken about. That being Saliba, Salah, Sarr, and Isak, where I might be able to do some transfer thinking around for the rest of the video. So let's move over to the transfer page for FPL and have a look at what could happen with any of those four players. Of course, I've only got one free transfer to use, and anything outside of that would be for a hit. So I need to be very selective about which one I deem the biggest issue in my side. Right then, so moving over to the transfer page in FPL for the final time this season, one free transfer and 0.4 in the bank, which will be very important to where my transfer plans are going to be going this week. Starting off in defence, Saliba being a doubt is a bit annoying considering he was an absolute lock to start for me, and that double Arsenal defence against Southampton seemed like a good chance of banking some clean sheet points. However, him going off with a bit of a hamstring doubt in Game Week 37 in such an important game as well probably suggests to me that it was enough of an issue not to be taking a risk on him for the rest of the season. The last thing they need to do right now is take a risk on Saliba. They are completely locked into Champions League. They don't need to worry about this fixture, and taking any gamble on a player as important as Saliba who knows? If he's got any sort of hamstring issue, then they could aggravate it against Southampton and he might miss even pre-season. He might get something that rules him out for the start of next season. So why take the risk? Even if it's a 1%, 2% chance of aggravating what looked like a minor thing against Newcastle, there seems almost no logical reason to be starting him. So I don't really rely on him actually playing this game. That being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to use a transfer. I've got Milenkovic and I've got Munoz, both on the bench. Neither of those two players I would necessarily be confident of a clean sheet in their fixtures. Milenkovic I'd probably give the edge to against Chelsea. I think that's probably more likely to be a bit more of a cagey game because by far this is probably the most hotly contested fixture of the game week. Both of them are playing for Champions League football. Both of them need a result. And Nottingham Forest at home, if they can keep it tight, then hopefully they can nick something on the break or from a set piece, get a 1-0 win, and then they're in the Champions League next year, which would be huge for them. That being said, Chelsea's attack hasn't been too terrible, so I don't think there's a good chance of a clean sheet. I just think it's maybe slightly better than the odds of Crystal Palace keeping a clean sheet against Liverpool, which I imagine is going to be an out-and-out party game. Obviously, you've got the league winners and the FA Cup winners, and neither defence is going to be particularly tight or bothered, you wouldn't think anyway, and it's going to be a bit of a free-for-all. Now, with that in mind, that might mean Munoz could be a very good attacking threat to be pinning your hopes on in game week 38. So in both cases, I think there's at least the potential for points on the board for either Milenkovic or Munoz, to the point where I don't think it's worth using my very precious at this point one free transfer to take out one of those two just in case Saliba doesn't play, which of course I think is a pretty good chance he doesn't. But using my only free transfer to remove Munoz or Milenkovic just to have a backup for Saliba doesn't feel right for me, especially when there are other moves that I think provide more upside generally. Now, if I was to make that move and there were no other issues in my side, then I think Kirkez is the player that I'd want. The attacking threat's not bad. Obviously, final home game for Bournemouth this season, and against Leicester at home, it's a good chance of a clean sheet as well. So at least with Kirkez, you're giving yourself a chance of spiking a big return and there's upside there potentially. But I still think the odds are lower than maybe in the midfield or up front. So I'm hesitant and reluctant to use my free transfer in defence, especially given that I think Munoz at least carries enough attacking threat that he could get something against Liverpool. And Milenkovic carries both attacking threat, as we've seen recently, 5 goals this season, and of course has at least a chance of a clean sheet. So I need to get my bench order right. I will start Saliba just in the hope that he plays, but I don't think he will. And then when he doesn't play, I think Milenkovic or Munoz are fine to come in for him just for 1 week. And I think I'm very slightly moving towards Milenkovic right now because there's so much riding on it for Forest, but that's going to be very tight. Into the midfield and up front, I actually want to deal with strikers first because Alexander Isak is going to be a main talking point for most people this week. Now, I think if you've got no other issues with your starting 11, then Isak could be a reasonable sell, but I will provide a word of warning here. He was a doubt going into game week 38 last season and went and scored a 14-pointer. So Eddie Howe historically is fairly tight-lipped about these things. Newcastle still are playing for something. They need to field their strongest possible starting 11 in this game week. And Isak, it sounded like it was more of a slight issue keeping him out of game week 37 than a huge one, and possibly they were just resting him to make sure that he was going to be okay for Everton, where there's a better chance of a result, and if they beat Everton, they're guaranteed Champions League. So I think if I'm trying to read the tea leaves a little bit on this one, I reckon Isak probably does start, and therefore he's probably not worth a transfer out for me. However, if he is a risk and if he's a significant doubt going into game week 38 or ruled out altogether, which isn't impossible, Eddie Howe might spring a surprise and actually just tell us for real whether he's out or not, which seems unlikely, but he could. I need to have a plan either way. And I think the plan would be if we have confirmation that Isak is out, then it's an easy swap across to Evan Nilsson, as a lot of people will be eyeing up. Now, Evan Nilsson at home to Leicester, again, it's a fixture that we're going to keep talking about about in this video, it's probably the best fixture to be trying to find a haul in Game Week 38, where you can rely on the starting 11 for Bournemouth enough. Now, Arsenal, Liverpool both have good enough fixtures that you could back a haul for either of those two teams, but picking the starting 11 outside of a Salah, for instance, for Liverpool, and the same goes with Arsenal as well, is going to be much more difficult than it would be for Bournemouth. And I'd be very surprised if Evan Nielsen didn't start. His underlying attacking data, as you can hopefully see on screen now, has been really good, 0.49 XG per 90. And the form's not been too bad either. I do like him as an option. He's still only 4.1% owned, but I imagine that will climb by the deadline. If you've got a Cunha, if you've got a Mateta, then it's an easier sell. I would not be selling Watkins or Wissa for Evan Nielsen. And Isak, I think if we have any suggestion he could play, is a hold for me, because it's, again, a good fixture against Everton. They've already had their final home game of the season. They won't be too fussed about this Newcastle game. And Isak could have a good time of it if he plays. But obviously the doubt is there. I just wanted to raise what my transfer plan would be if we get confirmation that he is indeed out. But at time of recording, I'm planning on keeping him and starting him in the hope that he does play. And if we get no news whatsoever, I will probably hold on to him as well. Now, moving into the midfield, where I think the most interesting moves can be made this week, a quick word on Salah. I see a lot of people still debating whether or not to maybe get rid of him and move him across to Saka. And it is in the back of my mind as well. But despite the form that Liverpool and Salah in particular have been in, obviously with Salah, I believe it's no double-digit returns since game week 28. Yeah, that's a long, long time now. Only one attacking return at most in any given fixture since then, and he's only returned twice since game week 28, just one assist, one goal. It's really not fantastic. However, that fixture against Crystal Palace just screams goals to me. Palace, we saw it against Wolves. They weren't quite as fussed defensively. That was a big back and forth game, 4-2 in the end. Obviously, lots of goals in that one. They're going to be out celebrating all week. They've just had their final home game of the season as well. They're not going to care quite so much about this Liverpool game. And Liverpool themselves have already kind of had their party, and this is their final home game to put on a bit of a show in front of the fans before they go away for the break. Salah has been a frustrated figure recently, has been getting chances, just not taking them. And I just wonder if it's a bit of a perfect storm for him where everything can come together and he could have a huge final day against Palace to try and reach some records. So if we look at Salah at the moment, 28 league goals, he's going to be wanting 30, 18 assists, he's gunning for the record. So I do think that he's still a fantastic player to own this week. The form has been bad, but the form kind of goes out the window when it's game week 38 anyway. And home to Crystal Palace, to me, does scream points and it does scream goals. So I don't think I'm going to make that Salah to Saka move, especially because it's not like I'm doubting Saka starts majorly, but Arsenal don't really have anything to play for. So I do wonder if there's an outside chance that A, he gets rested and maybe just rests up ahead of next season already and gets an early start on it, or B, gets taken off early for Nwaneri, for instance, who has been great this season and potentially deserves some minutes in game week 38 as well. So with Saka, he's obviously a great buy. Southampton away from home is a great fixture. And even if he gets 60, 70 minutes, it's still going to be plenty of upside. But I would probably not be selling Salah for him, and that's the situation I'm in. If it was Palmer, if it was De Bruyne, I'd be much more tempted, especially if it's for free. With Salah, it's not really doing it for me at the moment. So I'm probably ruling that one out for now, which leaves one transfer left to make. And I think it's most likely where my transfer is going to go this week. And that is focused on Ismaila Sarr. Now, at the moment, what I could do is just bench Sarr and start Murphy and actually technically roll my transfer, which would be completely pointless. And if I was more confident that Murphy got 90 minutes or 80 plus minutes, then I would be more tempted maybe to not take a risk on Isak or to even make a defensive transfer, because Murphy at home to Everton could be fantastic. But given his minutes haven't been spectacular recently, he's got 190 against Chelsea. Outside of that, 60, 55, 66, 64, 61. He's getting 2/3 of a game. And I think that there are players out there that can give me a lot more than that. And if I just bench Murphy, then it gives me a good first sub that I can rely on to start, especially if Isak is out. And then I'm still getting a player from that fixture. His minutes might be a bit better as well, potentially, if Isak is out. And I think it's good enough to have as a first sub. With Sarr, on the other hand, it's not like I don't think Crystal Palace can score loads of goals against Liverpool, given that I think it will be a bit of a back and forth game. It will be very open, neither team too bothered about defending. But I do think that that is the position where I can maybe maximize upside and go for a player with a great fixture, or maybe just have a bit of fun in game week 38, because it's one position at the end of the day. My rank's not really going anywhere. I could just have a bit of a fun differential in there that I back to do well for one game week. With that in mind, I've picked out a few options that I can afford. This is where that 0.4 budget really comes into it. 5.6 million for Sarr, so I can only get up to a 6 million asset, which does limit me, but there are a selection of options. I think I've got 7 here that I do like the look of. Now, first of all, I think the obvious one could be Rodgers, away at Man United, who won't care about this fixture. He has tapered off a little bit, although he has gotten 2 assists in the last 2 games. I think his attacking threat's a little bit lower with when Asensio is playing, and he plays a little bit far wide for my liking in those fixtures where Asensio's playing through the middle. But he's still consistent enough. I just wonder if, given his ownership is quite high, and given that there are other good fixtures out there, is it really a fun enough differential for me? Is it going to make enough of a difference? I'm not so sure it would. So Rodgers is a great player to own this week, but I think I can have a bit more fun than that. So I'm probably ruling him out, although if you've got him yourself, he is a great player to own this week. After that, Bournemouth come into it again. Now, there are 3 players on the menu in midfield that are realistic FPL options. Cliver is probably the obvious one. I can afford him at 5.9 million, but I think it's fair to say the form has dipped off enough that I'm maybe a little bit put off. He's gotten 2 45-minute appearances in a row now, and before then it's not like the minutes were great either. 64, 71, and you have to go all the way back to game week 33 when he last got 90 minutes. Before that, obviously the injury, and he hasn't got an attacking return since game week 28 either. So I do just wonder if, although I think because he's on penalties and because of the fixture, the crowd will probably veer towards Cliver more often than the other Bournemouth players. Maybe there's an argument to have a look at the others as a differential and maybe back that they get better minutes. So Cliver, again, I think the sensible version of Sam earlier on in the season would say back the penalty taker. He's on set pieces. He's obviously a great FPL asset. Just go with him. But given it's 1 week, I think I'm more tempted to go with one of the other 2. Now, Semenyo and Tavernier. Semenyo has been an FPL troll all season for me. So maybe there's an argument to not go there, because why would I open myself up to getting trolled by him yet again? But I quite like the narrative of bringing him back in and maybe righting a few wrongs. It did seem that whenever I owned him and started him, he blanked, and whenever I benched him, he got something. But he's been a pretty decent FPL asset this season. 16 attacking returns, 90 minutes more often than not. And if you're looking for someone with high shot volume, and because of high shot volume could potentially haul, then he's probably your guy. He's had one of the highest shot counts in the league this season against Leicester, who again are one of the poorest defences. If he can get off 6 or 7 shots against them, he could get a couple of goals and he could get a bit of a haul and maybe give me a reason to remember him fondly. We can shake hands at the end of the season. I can tell him he's not a troll, and we can part on good terms going into the next season. The other option I don't mind is Tavernier, who a bit cheaper. I can afford him just as easily, but he's a mega differential, 0.2% owned. He himself has been getting 90 minutes recently, and I think it's only really injuries that has made him not a consistent option for Bournemouth this year. But 390 minutes in a row, only 1 assist in that time, but the data across the season isn't that far off of the likes of Kluivert or Semenyo to make him a terrible pick. He's playing in that 3 behind the striker. I do just wonder if, again, for a bit of fun, last week fun with a differential, Tavernier is an option you could consider. And he's not someone I want to rule out at this point at all. I think my 2 favourites right now are either him or Semenyo for that position. And I don't hate either of them. I could maybe even flip a coin going into Sunday. But I think out of the 2 right now, probably just favouring Semenyo, but I do like Tavernier as a differential. 0.2% owned is obviously fantastic. but the shot volume for Semenyo suggests to me that maybe there's a higher chance of a haul or catching some very positive variance for me. A few other options I like the look of as well. 3, in fact. You can look at Thomas Souček. 4.8 million, easy for me to afford. Has gotten a few goals recently. The minutes are generally not too bad. Little bit put off by the fact he only got 57 minutes against Nottingham Forest, but generally not too terrible. Again, pretty good differential at 1.4% owned. Ipswich away from home, who are terrible from set pieces, terrible in the air. Souček, that's what he does. That's his specialty. And he's actually got a surprising amount of goals this year. 9 goals, 2 assists. Maybe he'll want that 10th goal against Ipswich. I don't hate it. A nice differential to look at. Same goes for Minte at 4.8 million as well. 1% owned, so again, mega differential. A player who, again, has been a bit frustrating for me. I went with him at the start of the season and he didn't really pay off. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And he's slowly built up confidence and slowly built up minutes in that Brighton 11. So again, a player I really don't mind. The Spurs fixture on paper might not look like the best one out there, but a bit like the Man United argument, they're either going to be celebrating or not bothered at all about this fixture. And either way, I think that spells goals. And Brighton and Spurs are both decent attacking sides. And in fact, you probably go one step further than that. They're good attacking sides with, at times, leaky defences. Minte could capitalise on that. It could be a bit of a barnstormer. It could be a 3-all, 4-all that we've seen in seasons past. And I wouldn't put it past Minte to get an attacking return or 2 in that one. So I don't hate him either. And then finally, Marino, who missed out against Newcastle, but could come back in and play up front potentially against Southampton. Again, it's 6 million. I've got the exact money to do it. It's probably not my favourite option at time of recording, but if you really back goals in that Southampton fixture and you think Marino's the guy to start up front, then there's probably not many better options out there. The attacking threat's not been too bad since he's been up front. 7 goals, 2 assists, 0.33 XG per 90. Considering most of the season he was playing in holding midfield, that's really not too terrible. So I don't mind him as another differential. For me right now, I think if I was to click buttons today, it would probably be Sarr to Semenyo and try to right the wrongs of earlier on this season. I like the shot volume thing. And then obviously I would bench Murphy and cross my fingers that Isak starts. Same goes for Saliba. And I'd probably just about put Milenkovic as first sub ahead of Munoz. But that's not ruling out any of the other differentials. And I'll obviously be coming back later on this week to have a look at my team selection. Hopefully I'll have more of a solid plan for transfers by that point as well. And we'll talk about captains. We'll talk about other differentials in different positions too. In the meantime, though, my penultimate video of the season, it would be massively appreciated if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you've got any questions, do feel free to drop them below. I'll see you in my next video, probably Friday morning. Obviously, we've got a Sunday deadline, so a little bit more time to play with. So Friday morning, maybe Friday afternoon for my final team selection of the 24-25 season. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you next time.